meaning strong voice of the steersman. And what he will be telling today are known in his language as a Dao, which translates as a true telling. And today he will be telling in a Dao about raven and salmon. Without further ado, here's David Nelson III.
Joyson. Wyson. Das kelma mem timlanity wayu, kisput wadadip ego. My name is Strong Voice of the Steersman. I am from the Killawah clan from Metlakatla, Alaska. I've been telling Adao since 2003, so over 20 years I've been telling Adao. I've been telling Adao in our schools, to our children. Telling stories of our people to our people is probably the most nerve-wracking thing that you can do. You can tell tourists anything you want, and they'll believe you. You tell them you plant a totem pole from a little seed, and they'll be happy to see that. But when you're telling the true tellings of our people to our people, they have knowledge too. There's a saying in Somalia that you are not the only one that Tamsin is given knowledge to. So that means all of us know one thing or another, so we all come together and we strengthen each other. When I hear the word storytelling, I really want to change the way this happens. In Somali, I will say Galdam Aliyah, the carrier of words. Because that's what we're doing. We're carrying the words forward. I would love to see the Shinget, the Hadas, the Haida people, all of us, instead of calling us storytellers, because stories are made to be meant that we just did not have something that was solid in our belief system, and we didn't have something that were there. It was, I tell my students all the time that this is a way to make us feel like lesser than human beings by calling us storytellers, like what we're saying is not true. And like I said, in Somalia, Adao trans the true tellings. Now Raven, as you guys know him, amongst the Shinget, the Gitaganites is what we call the Shinget, or the Hadas, the Haida people, known as Raven. Amongst the Tsimshian, he's known as Tamsim. Amongst the Niska, he's known as Amsum. Amongst the Gitsan, he's known as Weget, a giant man. It's really kind of neat to hear all of his adventures and how he set our world in there after it was created. Our world was created, but it was kind of a mess in the way we did things. So I'm going to tell you the Adao of Tamsim and the salmon. One day, Tamsin was walking along the beach, and as always, he was hungry. Ever since he ate the scab off the shin bone of mouth at both ends, he just couldn't have enough. He could eat a whole whale, he could eat everything. He was always hungry. And so he sat there, and he's seeing salmon swimming out there. Johon, as he's known in Somalia, swimming out there. Tamsin really, really, really wanted the salmon. He wanted to eat them. And so he's sitting there, and he's going along, and he's thinking to himself, how can I get him? I don't have a fishing pole. I can't reel him in. I don't have a net to throw out there. I don't even have a canoe to go paddle out that way. How can I do this? And so he's sitting there thinking, he had an idea. He thought that if he challenged salmon to a fight, when salmon jumped up to hit him, he would land on the shore and he would be stuck there, and Tamsin would go over and catch him really quick. Before that, he thought about maybe he can jump in and just wrestle him, but then he's seen eagle try to wrestle a salmon before and almost drown. He's sitting there having to work really hard to swim. You guys have seen that before, where eagle will come down and catch a salmon. The salmon will be too big and almost drag him down. The eagle has to swim ashore because he can't fly up. Well, Tsimshian thought, this is the way I'm going to get him. I'm going to get him. I'm going to take him, and once he gets on shore, I'm going to hit him with a stick. And so he does that. He goes out to salmon. He sees salmon swimming around out there. Hey, salmon, I think I can beat you in a fight. Come on, salmon, let's fight. The salmon's swimming along there. He's like, oh, no, Tsimshian. I've heard all about your adventures. I've heard about when you tricked tide woman into bringing the tides in twice a day, throwing sand in her eyes. I've heard about how you tricked crab into going through out there and trying to get him out there, and how you didn't want to be his friend anyway. I've heard about when you're talking with the deer, when you release the sun, the moon, the stars, how you got fresh water, how you got fire. You tricked all these people. You're not going to trick me, Tsimshian. I know you too well. I know of you too well. So Tsimshian is sitting there, and he's going along. He's like, no, that's not what this is all about. I just want to see who's the stronger, you or me. Come on, salmon, let's fight. Salmon says, well, all right. I'll see what can happen. And so salmon swims back and forth and back and forth, and he dives down, jumps up out of the water, hits Tsimshian in the chest with his tail, knocking him halfway up the beach. Tsimshian sits there, he's like, oh man, holy cow, I didn't think you'd hit me that hard. He staggers his way down to the beach, and then he goes there, and what does he find? Nothing. Salmon managed to wiggle his way back into the ocean, flipping himself all back in there. So Tsimshian's sitting there, oh man, I couldn't get him to do that. How can I get him to stay up in there? What can I do? And so he starts thinking. He's thinking, like he always does, Tsimshian's always thinking a way to trick something so that he can get what he wants. And so he decides he wants to dig a big hole. And he starts digging and digging and digging, and he digs this big hole right near the water's edge. And when that happened, he looked out at Salmon. He's like, Salmon, you caught me off guard. I wasn't ready. I think I can beat you, Salmon. I think I can beat you if I'm ready this time. He's like, come on, Salmon, let's fight. Salmon thought, well, you must not really have learned your lesson yet, Tsimshian. I just beat you one time. You need me to beat you a second time. I don't know. Tsimshian looked, come on, Salmon, what are you? Chicken of the sea? You can come on, let's fight. Salmon didn't want to get disrespected, especially in his own water. He sat there and he was like, okay, you asked for it. And so Salmon swims back and forth, dives down a little bit deeper, jumps up out of the water, hits Tsimshian so hard that he goes up to the tree line. Tsimshian gets up, he's like, oh man. He gets down there. He gets down to this wonderful hole that he just dug, which had now filled with water, as it always happens at the beach. It filled with water. And he sat there and he looked inside there, and what did he find? Nothing. Because the water had filled the hole, Salmon was able to swim around and jump back out into the ocean, flop back on the land and flipped himself back out to sea. Now Tsimshian's sitting there, all right, I dug a hole, that almost got him. I got him to come up here. What else can I do? I've got it. He jumps high enough that he can get there, and when he was in there, he was able to just jump high enough to get back on the land. What if I put rocks and start stacking them up right around the front of the hole here? And so he does that. He stacks these rocks all the way up in front there. And he looks out at Salmon, and he's like, Salmon, I don't know why you keep getting me when my back is turned. I wasn't ready. I am ready now. I think I can beat you. One-on-one, me and you, Salmon. Come on, Salmon, let's fight. Salmon's like, you still haven't learned your lesson, have you, Tamsin? And so he sits there, he swims back and forth and back and forth. He dives down the deepest he's ever dove before, jumps up, smacks Tamsin so hard he knocks him all the way back into the woods. Tamsin comes out of there, staggering out of the woods down to the beach, and he comes down, he looks in the hole, and what does he find? Salmon! He goes and gets his club, gets a stick, and he goes over and he sits there, and he whacks Salmon over the head, dresses him down, starts a nice fire, and then he's sitting there, and he has a nice fire going, and he's got the salmon out there cooking slowly over the fire, just kind of there so he can eat. Starting to smell really good. I forgot to eat lunch today, I think. So, as Tamsin was doing that, that smell is going out there. And all of a sudden, Tamsin's 3 nephews came running up. The crows. They hopped up and they said, hey, Uncle Tamsin, what are you doing? Well, nephews, I am cooking the salmon that I tricked and I caught him. He's like, that's great, Uncle Tamsin. Oh, it sure smells good. They said, eh. Every time you hear a Tsimshian say, eh, you better know you're going to be giving up some of that food because they love what they hear. So they're sitting there, they're like, eh. And they sat there and they said, oh boy, that sure smells good. And we would like some, Uncle Tamsin. We really want some. Tamsin thought for a second, well, nephews, that's fine, except for I don't have any plates. So if you go to my house, go get 4 plates, because there's 1, 2, 3 of you and then myself, that's 4. Go get 4 plates and come back and I will share this wonderful salmon with you. And so the nephews went off to their Uncle Tamsin's house, and they went out there, and as many young people tend to do, they started playing around. They sat there and they're playing tag, they're sitting there having fun, taking berries and throwing them at each other, just being silly young boys. Well, they were playing for a little while and they said, one of them said, boy, I sure am hungry now. All that playing got me hungry. The other one said, oh yeah, Uncle Tamsin has that wonderful salmon. Let's go back and see him. And so they go off and they see Tamsin, and he has there, and he's standing there, and he was like, oh, they said, okay, we're ready to eat, Uncle Tamsin. Tamsin looked, nephews, have you forgotten something? And the nephews looked at each other like, nope, we're all here. 1, 2, 3, all 3 of us, we're here. You're here, we're here, we're all here, ready to eat. Tamsin said, nephews, you forgot to get the plates. Nephews, oh no, we totally forgot. We'll be right back, Uncle Tamsin. And they ran off into the forest, and they got 4 big skunk cabbage leaves. They brought it back to Tamsin. Tamsin, they said, here we go, Uncle Tamsin, we can eat off these. Tamsin says, nephews, we usually only use that for cooking. We don't use it for eating off of. I have proper plates at my house. Here, you stay here. You watch my fish. Make sure nobody eats it. Okay, Uncle Tamsin, we'll do that. Nobody will eat it. And so Tamsin goes off to his house, comes back with 4 plates. And what does he find when he comes back? 3 big, fat, happy crows. They eaten the whole salmon by themselves. And they're sitting there, they're like, he's like, nephews, what have you done? We got tired of waiting for you, Uncle Tamsin. We were really, really hungry. So we decided to start eating without you. Hoping you'd make it back in time, but apparently you didn't. Tamsin was very, very angry. Back then, crow's feathers were pure white. Tamsin grabbed his nephews and he rubbed them in the charcoal that's all there, turning their feathers all black like we see them today. The adao that I told you tells you of our fish traps that we have. There is still one out in Kamgis that works every day. 2 weeks ago, I stood with our second graders and I told that adao to our students in an actual fish trap. It was really neat. They didn't understand they were standing in the fish trap. There was a dugout part. There were rocks on there right near a stream. So when the tide comes in, the salmon come up the stream. When it starts going out, they go to where the pool is and they get stuck in there. So in September, when we want salmon, we go and start scooping them out of there. And we don't have to go out and do all that other stuff. The other part of there is how the crows got their black feathers, just like Tamsin when he got stuck in the smoke hole. So that is the adao. That's actually two adao that I tell, true tellings to our students almost every day. And so, thank you all for listening to me today. And yeah, I watched last week's and he told 4 stories. I went to KIC's culture camp, a 7-day culture camp, and I told different adao every day. And the kids were just, they said they didn't want to do that. And I will tell you one thing, when I was up by the fire and I was stretching out, because, it's like I'm getting a little older, I need to stretch out a little bit more. And when I was moving around, these kids who had the first sunny day in the 5 days that we had been there, they were playing around, having a good time, swimming and everything. They see me moving my arms around like that, and they'd stop what they were doing. They came running up to me, and they said, "Oh, we thought you were telling a story." That's because my arms move around so much when I tell a story. So, I said, thank you guys so much.
Thank you, David. Now, if there's any questions in the audience, we have time for a number of those, and if you have one, just raise your hand and I'll bring the microphone over. Here's one.
I've heard you say that you were a teacher for many years, so I was wondering what your dream was for the Shmaya language for our future generations.
Oh, my dream is to never have to teach Tsimshian in the schools ever again. I would love for this next generation to come up and to be able to speak without feeling like they're being suppressed, without feeling like they're lesser than anybody else. And I told them, as we go through cycles of funding for everything, it ebbs and flows just like our tides. My ultimate goal would be to watch our valedictorian give their entire speech in Tsimshian and have to have on the side a translation of what they're saying, or have somebody standing right there. I wish Sigolp was here. When Sigolp was testing out one of his new technologies that he was going, and I showed him, I introduced him to some of the children that have Tsimshian names, something that I was not able to, I didn't get until I was really a lot later in life. In many ways, I'm kind of jealous of these kids, because up until 1973, we didn't have dancing in Mount Takatla. And then it happened. It happened through Margaret Bolton, who also told me some of these adao that I learned. It happened through Ira Booth and many others who have gone on. They took the dancing, and when they first started dancing, people started laughing at them. they were pointing and laughing at them, and they tried to make them feel lesser. And I've heard, and I'm glad that the churches have started to come around to what we need to be today, in that now the churches are starting to understand. They're almost overcompensating right now, because one of the ones who works here, she's working at Breeze Inn up here, she got baptized as a child, and she asked if I can come into the church and sing a song. And I went into the church, and probably for the first time ever being able to sing a song and having one of the children dance in there was a wonderful thing. Since then, the Presbyterian Church has had, they've sponsored a native dance youth dance group, and they've done quite a bit trying to do stuff in there. So really kind of neat to be able to see that. And we've made a lot of strides, but we still have a long ways to go. When I grew up, I had 50 fluent speakers in Matlakatla. Today we have one, so I continue to try to use language, which is why, out of respect for doing that, when I talk about Raven, I talk about him as Tamsum, as that's the way I learned. I tell the origin of Tamsum. I tell how we released the sun, the moon, the stars. I tell how we got fresh water, how we got fire. Some of my favorite ones are, they don't even have anything to do with Tamsum, like Salmon and Young Prince. That's a wonderful, wonderful Tao to tell, and it talks about taking too much, and that's kind of what I try to teach my students every time I go throughout there. Don't take more than what you need. We've held a natural. People always say natural resource says we can't catch this or that. I'm like, for thousands of years we've done that. I said all of our stuff for thousands and thousands of years, our science, Western science is starting to catch up to us. I've seen just recently where people are talking about getting seagull eggs, and they say you can grab them when there's 1 or 2 in there, and they'll lay it back again. It's like that's something that we've known for thousands of years. Knowing when to go catch the salmon, where to go catch the salmon, it's been known for thousands of years. Talking about the Oligan run and the grease that comes from the seal, everything that we had has been done for thousands of years, and we understood how it happens, why it happens. Sometimes we don't know. That's why we have these adao that explain why things happen, instead of sitting there trying to figure out, oh yeah, the scientific term for that is this, and this is what happens. So that's kind of what, yeah.
You said in the beginning that there was a story about why Raven is hungry all the time.
Yep.
About pulling a scab off or eating a scab or something.
Yeah.
Could you tell us about that?
I can actually tell that adao. Obviously I have time, right? I'm used to telling adao to younger ones, and I got to keep it to 5 to 10 minutes, and they're like, you got 45 minutes. Okay. I'll try to stretch it out. I actually told 2 adao out there, and I'll tell this one. So, one day, there was a chief and his wife, a Samoyed and his wife, Sigadamana. And they were enjoying every part of life that they had. And very suddenly, their son had passed away. And of course, this made the Samoyed, the chief, very, very sad, and his wife. And they sat there, they placed his body at the back of the longhouse, and they sat there, and his wife cried every day. Samoyed Katsimlahaga had heard her crying every day, and so he wanted to ease her pain. So on the 3rd day of her getting ready to go cry, she was sitting there, she woke up that morning, and she went back to where her son's body was. And she didn't see her son, but she seen this being shining bright as day, standing there. And she said, son, is that really you? Could it be you? And the being said, yes. Samoyed Katsimlahaga can't stand to hear you cry anymore. You were too sad, so he sent me back. And so the boy was sitting there, he was taken in. And of course, with doing this, they made this huge feast. Think of everything that you love in the native foods. And I always ask the kids, what's something that you love in native foods? So what's your favorite native food?
Smoked salmon.
Smoked salmon, oh man. I get ready to have some this weekend. They're smoking 50 pounds of salmon I'll be eating in Seattle this weekend. Plus at home, I always visit my cousins whenever they're smoking too. Yeah. What else do you guys like? Berries. Berries, absolutely. There were berries there. What else? Yeah, everything you can think of. And I always tease my cousin. I was like, they even had a bucket of Kentucky Fried Chicken there. We went to Tsimshian, and we sat there, and they put out 5 tables of food there. My cousin doesn't eat a lot of native food, and right in the middle there was a bucket of KFC, and he's like, "Hey, somebody's thinking about me." I was like, "Yeah, everybody has different tastes." But they had all this wonderful food out there, and of course, everybody that came would eat. The Samoyed, the chief, and his wife would go over and eat. The young boy didn't eat at all. He would just take a piece of fat, chew on it, get the flavor, and spit it back out. Now, this made the chief's wife very, very worried. She thought she was going to lose her son again because he wasn't eating at all. And so she's sitting there, and she was like pleading with him, trying to get him to eat. And everything that they brought to him was seal grease, ooligan grease, smoked salmon, ooligans, fried ooligans, smoked ooligans, seaweed, crab, abalone, gumboots, as Johon would say, a gumboot sandwich. Everything that they brought to him, he refused. He didn't want to eat it. He just kept chewing on that piece of fat, and he spit it back out into the fire and blew up. Then they just kind of left. They just went for a walk. They left him with the slaves. The slaves, the man was called Mouth at Both Ends. This man could sit there, he would come up and we'd cut off a big piece of whale, throw it on the fire, consume the whole thing. Everything that he had, he would sit there and consume everything, no matter what it was. He tried to make sure that there was enough for others there, but he was constantly hungry. Of course, the young boy was worried. He's like, "How is it that you eat so much?" And Mouth at Both Ends said, "Well, I took a scab off the shin bone. I ate it. Ever since then, I couldn't eat enough." And so he's standing there. And he's like, "Okay, I want to try that." The female slave said, no, don't do it. Don't do it. You don't want to do that. And the young boy said, "No, I'll just put it in a piece of fat and I'll chew on it and spit it back out. I'll just get a taste of it. It won't be that bad. I just want to see what it tastes like." The female slave says, "Please do not do that. I don't want you to do that." And the young boy says, "I'll be fine." And he said, "Can I have a scab from the shin bone?" And so Mouth at Both Ends took a scab from his shin bone and sat there and wrapped it up into a piece of fat and handed it to the young boy. The young boy sat there, chewed on it for a little bit, and did as he always does, spit it back into the fire. When the Samoyed, the chief, and his wife came back home, the young boy said, "I'm hungry." And they were so excited. They put out all this food for him. They filled up the whole longhouse, and he ate all of it. And he said, "I'm still hungry." they brought more and more food. They started going into their provisions. And they had everything that they had put away, and he ate all of it. Since he was the chief of the village, he could reach out to other houses and say, I need more food. I ran out of food. And so he started doing that. He started hitting up the other houses, and they started bringing more food. Everything they brought, he ate and ate and ate. And every time after he was finished, he says, I'm still hungry. The people of the village were really, really worried at this time. They thought that if they did not have him leave, he was going to eat everything and they would all starve to death. And so they're standing there. They come together in a longhouse and they meet and they talk with the chief. And they said, well, he has to go. He can't stay here amongst us. He's going to eat everything. We're not going to have anything. We're going to starve. It's only going to be him by himself, eating everything in sight. And so the chief says, I will speak with him. The chief brought him over and he said, he had a big bladder. And he sat there and he brought it to him. He says, here you go. Once you get to the other side, you won't go across the ocean there. There are seeds in here. You spread them across the land. There will be plenty of food for you always. There's berries. You put these little eggs in the streams. It'll become salmon. They'll always come back. This is all stuff that'll come back. And so he handed him a pebble to put in his mouth. And he said, when you get tired, when you get tired, you drop the pebble into the water. It'll become an island. He fashioned him a cloak of raven feathers so that he could fly. He had one more thing. He said, I am giving you the name Handsome. Again, like I said, because he liked dressing in that cloak of raven feathers, the Hadas, the Haida people, the Gidagonians, the Tlingit people, loved to call him Raven. That's how he got to be. And so he's sitting there, and he puts on this cloak of raven feathers, and he flies off. And every once in a while, he'll drop the pebble and land on there and rest. He'll pick it back up and fly again. And when he got to the mainland, he starts opening up that bladder, and he spread the seeds of all the berries that we have here today. He put the eggs in the river. They became our salmon that we have today. So he will always have something to eat. So that's the adult of how Tamsin became to be eaten all the time. Sound like a teenager though, right? Eating all the time. Yeah. Thank you.
Here, we got a question over here.
Yeah, I would like a comment that my question is Shangukeidí, who's it? Shangukeidí, Teikweidí, Kaagwaantaan, Before we speak, we always introduce ourselves so we know who's talking. And I just want to congratulate you and your people on your fishing rights that you got for your island. It's a big thing. I'm a commercial fisherman. I fished the Taku River for 16 years. One of the last Taku Tlingits on this side that fished our river, besides my grandfather, which this is his last year. And I see the strength of your people when you talk, and how you say this is not a story, but it's our history. And I say that too about our arts. It's not art. We create stuff for meaning. So I just like to say Kanosh Chish. You're always welcome on the Taku.
Joyson.
Thank you for those comments. They were very You said that you didn't start to do your traditional dancing until 1973.
Yep.
And we know that when you came with Father Duncan from Canada, that all of your traditions were, he tried to suppress your traditions. And yet what we see is from this lecture series that we've had several Tsimshians who tell raven stories. And then of course we know that you guys are great artists here. Some of the great art comes from Metlakatla. So how did that happen? How was it that you were able to continue your history telling? And this, because I know Father Duncan was punishing. I read a lot of the history. I did an ethnographic study on the Tsimshian history, and so I'm aware of what you went through. But yet you guys survived.
Yeah.
How was that?
In 1982, people talk about David Moxley doing a potlatch, calling it the first potlatch, although we've taken a lot of what we do as Native people and we've done them in different ways. One of the greatest examples is at a funeral, we make sure everybody's fed. That's a potlatch. When we sit there, we talk about the person that has passed on. A lot of times we tell funny stories to make people laugh, lift their spirits up. In the old ways, when a black feast was going on, that was our funeral area, there'd be men dressed up as women, and they come out just to try to make people laugh so they can lift people's spirits up. Up and go and lift their hearts. Some of our songs had been sung. My grandfather, Benjamin Alfred Haldane, had gone to photograph some of our people doing stuff in the underground in a time where if he was caught there, he would have been arrested right alongside them. But there was many people who sat there and defied everything that we did, and they're the ones who understood that if we let them eradicate us, then we'll be the descendants of the Tsimshian. So we had people like Melbourne Booth, who sat there and told me stories of when he was in school, that whenever he was speaking the language, he would have to hold his hands out like this, and the teacher would take a yardstick and hit him over the hands. And he showed me right where his hands were broken many times. He told me all this stuff, and he said, I did it because I understood the value in what we do. And so we found ways to do things from our traditional way into bringing them into there. Even like when they had us singing hymnals, we translated those all to Somali so that we could still use the language and do that type of stuff. Duncan still allowed us to speak our language, still allowed us to do weaving so that we could sell our wares out there. At the World Fair in Seattle, a lot of our food that we preserved and some of the baskets that we made were brought down there to what is now University of Washington campus. That's where they had the World's Fair. A lot of that stuff was there, and it's really kind of neat to see that. Really difficult, and to have people like Arnold Booth come up to me and talk to me, and he would tell me that what I'm doing is right because it's coming from the heart, not because somebody sat there and told me that this is exactly the way you need to do it. And one of the other things that I got to hear, and it's really difficult for me to do, is because when amongst us, of course, we have the 4 clans, as you see on the totem pole here, the Tsimshian pole, you see the 4 clans represented there. As a Giswidwada, the Kilwell, it's not my job to tell a Lachibu, a Lachskiik, or a Ganhada how to do their business. It's not my job. They can come and ask me. They can ask me for guidance, and I tell them, I said, be careful. Do not give up your power. It's the same thing I tell everybody that's going through out there. Don't give up your power. Because when we start asking other people, outside people, And this is the wonderful thing I love about people like Sealaska and Tlingit and Haida. They're starting to empower our own people. Because for a long time, I've been in education business for 19 years now. Manti Wilma Baines Chahim had, she told me 20 years ago, you're going to come work for the school and you're going to work with kids and you're going to be good at it. And she didn't give me a choice. The Tsimshian women, when they tell you to do something, holy cow. So yeah, she told me that, and 19 years later, I'll be in my 20th year next year, sharing our culture, sharing our adao, sharing our way of life with our students there. Doesn't matter if I'm teaching a class or standing there, those kids come to me whenever something's going on. And I love that they have that respect. I give them the respect, and they give it back to me. I don't ever, I tell them in elementary, I said, I promise you one thing, I will never raise my voice at anger in any one of you. I said, I'll raise my voice when I'm singing. I'll raise my voice if there's something in danger, like if you're listening to your stuff and you're not paying attention, you're looking down there, and all of a sudden you're going to step off a cliff or something, I'll yell really loud to get your attention. Third one is if I'm cheering you on. And I tell them all the time, I was like, I said, you will hear me cheering you on no matter what you do in life. And that's exactly what I want to do. I want to make sure I cheer on all these, like all of our people. Doesn't matter if you're Shangukeidí, Haida, Tsimshian, Iyak, Niska, Gitsan. When one person does something good, all of us do something good. That's the beautiful thing about our way of life, because we don't think about the individual, we think about the whole. So.
David, we had a question from one participant who's viewing online, so we have more than who was just in the room here viewing today's event. And their question is, what was your favorite story growing up?
Cool.
And they're wondering if there's a way to access the stories, and I'm guessing they mean maybe in published or recorded form.
Yeah, I think one of my favorite is in 1994 when I heard my cousin Robert Fredrickson tell a story for the first time. It was the first time I seen a Galdamalia, a carrier of the words, tell it out to our people, about our people in 1994 at Albert Bolton's Memorial Potlatch. He told the origin of mosquito, and I love that one. And it's not a Raven story, but I love that. I love that one. I was able to. I watched him. And I did. I would try to mimic as much as he can. I had it filmed in 1994. And I watched every bit that he did, and I was just like, that just told me that I want to do that someday. And here I am doing this. I told her Adal in Prince of Wales, and Sitka, obviously here in Juneau, down in Washington, over in Canada, when we were sitting in the longhouse over near Mount Catala, British Columbia, we went over there and I told Adal there, and they were just like, that was wonderful. We've heard that one, but we never heard it like that before. That was wonderful. So yeah, telling that one, the origin of mosquito is a wonderful one. Like I said, I tell more. Some are about Mouse Woman. Mouse Woman is super important to us in that if we listen to Mouse Woman, then things will go well. If we don't listen to Mouse Woman, we don't. So when I talk with my kids, what would Mouse Woman tell you to do? And then they start to line themselves back up with everything going on there. So, yeah.
I had a question I wanted to ask you. I'm sure this varies with the context of what's going on in the Adao, but I'm just wondering how you picture Kamsa when you're telling these Adao, like in his interactions with the king salmon. How do you view him? Sometimes he dons that raven skin cloak, so he may appear as a raven, but at other times, like you described him as a shining brilliant young boy, so he takes on many forms, but what are some of the ways you actually pictured him?
Being a transformer, being able to transform himself, like when he got out the sun, moon, and stars, he transformed himself into a hemlock needle, like a little tiny hemlock needle. He transformed himself into that, dropped down in there. After he got inside, he was inside, he transformed himself into a baby. And he didn't look like a normal baby, you know, and they can grab him, they can step on his feet and grab him and stretch him out that way. I always ask the kids, can I make you grow like that? I step on your feet and pull you up and make you grow faster? No, I didn't think so. And so it's a wonderful thing to sit there and do that because Tsimshian is always adapting, always trying to figure out ways to do stuff. After he released the sun, moon, and stars, I talk about how he was flying and he came across these fishermen and he said, hey, I see you got some salmon there. You want to share some of that salmon? They said, no. He's like, come on, I'll let out the sunlight. I got it tucked inside my cloak here. They said, yeah, right, Tsimshian, you don't. And so he opened up a little bit, let a little bit of the light shine out, and they were just amazed. They gave him the salmon, and then he released the sun. That's how we got the sun in the sky. After he was done with that, after he was done eating, he went to go transformed himself into a woman. And he seen himself for the first time transformed as a woman in the lake. And he sat there and he's like, why do I got such a big nose? Holy cow. So he broke off a piece of that and put it right here. And that's why women wear labre there. So they're high-ranking women. So it's really kind of neat to be able to say that. So, yeah. I love Walter Poirier from Yakutat. We had gotten together for an event in Prince of Wales, and he started off, and I heard the gentleman last week start off the same way. Raven was flying on the Nass River. I love that, because that tells our connection that's gone back for thousands and thousands and thousands of years, and that's always been there. We always have that. And we always will support one another, you know, no matter what we're doing. So that's a beautiful thing to have sitting there. And the first time I heard that, Walter Poirier, I wasn't scheduled to tell Nadal at that event, but he heard of me, and he's like, "You're gonna tell a story, and I'm gonna write down all sorts of notes for you." Make you better, you know. It's like, here's Walter Poirier, the one who's done stuff for museums and done all this wonderful stuff. He's been in documentaries talking about all this stuff, and it's beautiful to sit there and say, for this man to sit there and say, I'm going to help you get better. And I love that. I said, thank you. And he had 3 pages written down of notes. And when I sat down with him after, I was like, okay, I'm ready to go over the notes. He's like, oh no, these are for me. You're a wonderful storyteller. Holy cow. He was taking down notes on how he can improve himself. And I was like, oh my gosh. I was like, you know, I don't ever think of myself as that. But he still had some great advice for me in that like I said, when we talk about, you know, our stories, they're not stories. That's another way for us to tell that we're lesser than humans, because what's there is not true. Why the tide comes in twice a day is not true. How fire got out there is not true. How when Tsimshian shakes himself off to get some of the excess water off, that's when it rains. They tell us that's not true, because they say that's just a story. That's just a story. And I tell them, no, we're tens of thousands of years. Our science has known much more than what you have. It's time for you guys to catch up. So.
Any more questions or comments for David?
Thank you for imparting your wisdom. I really appreciated it. So I moved to Juneau in the early 60s. I've had my children and my grandchildren here. What would you like us to know and how to help our children have respect for the culture here?
Just show them that what we're doing is not something that we just do on a special occasion. It's something that we live every day. It's something that we do every day. Last week I had danced with a dance group. I went out to get cedar bark, and I got Devil's Club, and I went to a dance practice on a Tuesday. Wednesday I prepped drum skins for making the next day, and I taught our students I talked to them about murdered and missing Indigenous women and all that other type of stuff. And then Thursday, I got to make drums with these kids, and I got out there. And Friday, our final day of school, I snuck down to elementary because I knew they were going to sing, because they sing every day down there in our elementary. We sing down there every day. We start our mornings off with song. And this time, because it was the last day of school and the last part of school, they went outside and they sang. And I snuck down there and I sang with them. And I came back on Saturday, and I went and I put a name on one of my great nephews. I put a Somali name on my great nephew. And Sunday, I sat there and I got to dance again with a dance group and do all that type of stuff. So when I say it's every day, it's not something that I can sit there and say, well, I think they got the schedule today. It's like, I don't have to wait for something that's scheduled. Native people, we do things when we feel they're right. That's just what we do. We do things when we feel they're right. It's not something that we plan. I know celebrations every 2 years, but I feel it's right every year. Like, it's a celebration every year. So people get in different groups almost every summer, and they dance for one reason or another. So that's, although we all come together every 2 years, we don't stop. We don't just dance at those 2 years. We dance almost every day, and we do our language every day. We do our preservation every day. And I always tell people, not a single one of us, there's not a single one of us that knows everything. All of us know something, and if we all work together, then we'll be much stronger together rather than trying to do things apart. Yep.
Now I'm wondering, David, do you have any closing remarks you'd like to make? Otherwise, we might.
Yeah, I actually wanted to share a song. As I mentioned, my Aunt Wilma, 20 years ago, told me I'm going to be in education. So I'd like to share the song that I composed for her. She was going through cancer. We did our first 4-act Tsimshian play at the high school there. And so we sang the song. And so if I can get some of the dancers up here to do this while I get this done. It says, walk softly, great woman. Thank you. Walk softly, great woman. You follow the path of your grandmothers. And that's important for us all to know that we do that. So if I can get you guys to come out and do that one. Okay. Joyce. I did that song not only for Auntie Wilma, who has done stuff for me, Quite recently, we lost one of our Lakibu matriarchs down in Seattle. I'll be going down to pay my respects, and I wanted to make sure that that was done for her as well. So, Oyasha Tani Snusum, Willamuxisum Dakoi, Luam Gold, Wilnisisum Sagawan, Azixago, the Subalike Samalia, Azixago to Eligigim Adalgum, Da Quasum. Thank you all so much for listening to me. I said I'm very proud to be learning our language, and I'm very proud that I was able to give the true tellings to you all. Thank you guys so much.
We have one more remark that would like to be made from the audience.
I'd like to say Beneshish again. What I said earlier, I want everyone to know that what I said in Tlingit is I'm a 7th generation descendant of Chief Anklahash on the Taku, and I am one of the last Taku descendants that are fishing still on the Taku River on this side. So when I said the Tsimshian people are welcome on our river anytime, that's the right that I have to say that. So that's written in stone now. Sheesh.
What he was talking about with our fishing rights, we'd gone to the state and they tried to hold us to our 3,000-foot boundary around our island, saying we can only fish there. We have a dhow from our elders that talked about us going up past Kodiak, and the Kodiak people talking about when we came up there. When we went up to Bristol Bay, we go up halibut fishing, transfer all the way down there. In Yakutat, they still hold our songs, and I'm going to say this right here, right now, that one day we're going to get all of our songwriters, all of our strong dancers. We're going to come back for those songs in Yakutat, and we're going to come up in our canoes, and we're going to say, we're challenging once again. I know those Yakutat people can really dance really well, so it's going to be wonderful. It's like, why not? Why not? Let's do it again. Let's see if we can win those back. If not, then Yakutat gets more songs. That's a wonderful thing, right?
Thank you so much, David, for
Yep.
I think the 3 adults you telling today
Yep.
and answering all of our questions and the song.
Yeah.
So one more round of applause for David. And this is the final storytelling event for the month. On Thursday, we will have Dr. Tom.
True tellings.
Sorry, True Tellings. Adauch in Smalkif and Shkasnit or Wu in Lingít. On Thursday, we'll have Dr. Tom Thornton doing an academic review about the figure of Raven and his adventures. Thank you, Walter.